Welcome to Hope Church, man. We are so excited to have you with us right now. I want to welcome all of our Hope Church locations. So everybody here in Burlington, it is so good for you to be here with us today. I want to say what's up to everybody over in Mebane today. So excited to have you with us. And for all of our Hope Church Online family, wherever you're watching this at today, wherever you're out in the world, thank you so much, whether it's today or a week from now or 5 years from now. We're just excited that you've chosen to be with us. It's really cool that, man, God really is growing our online family. And so it's really cool for you to be part of it. And we want you to know you are part of our family. And so thank you for journeying with us. I really believe that God's got something incredible for you today. I've been really, really excited about this season that we are in currently as a church. And honestly, I get really excited about seasons in general because I don't know if y'all have noticed, I don't know, again, where you're at, what the weather's like in your world, but here in Central North Carolina, fall is upon us. How many fall lovers do we got today by a show of hands at all of our locations that love some fall? I love me some fall season, right? It's when you can break out some long sleeve t-shirts, you can put on some hoodies, right? You can actually go outside without sweating to death, right? I am a big firm advocate in sweating for a purpose, but the purpose is not just walking outside and walking to your car and sweating to death. Let's be honest, here in North Carolina, Central North Carolina, we really don't get 4 seasons. We get like 8 months of summer. I mean, that's what happens for us. So summer starts like in April, and sometimes it goes all the way through October. A couple years ago, my brother was in town from Orlando with his oldest son. They were hunting at our house. It was the middle of November. We were hunting outside in shorts and t-shirts, swatting mosquitoes. It was insane. He came up from Orlando and he said, it is more humid here than it is down in Florida right now, right? And so in that moment, that day, I actually disconnected an animal from his life, however you want to word that. And so we had to carry this deer out of the woods. And I'm sitting there sweating to death in the middle of November. And so what do we get? We get like 8 months of summer. We get a few weeks of fall. We get sort of a winter for 2 or 3 months. And sometimes it can be cold, but it's pretty mild. And then maybe we get a month or two of spring and we're right back at it. I think what makes North Carolina appealing for those people who live up north or Midwest is that we actually have kind of mild summers. And so we do see a migration of people here in North Carolina and the Triangle, the Triad, especially down in Charlotte, where a lot of people have said, I don't want to go out of Florida because it's too hot in the summer, but I like North Carolina because the winters there aren't too bad, right? But let's be honest. People that come from up north, they come from the Midwest, those people just built different, ain't they? I mean, they just different. Because their winters up there are crazy. Like if you live in North Carolina and there is just the threat of a possibility that if the moon aligns in a certain direction and the wind comes in from a certain way, that we might have some precipitation. There could be a possibility of a chance, everything shuts down, right? I mean, all the grocery stores are out of milk and out of bread and out of eggs, and we just go crazy, right? We just shut down because when it gets cold, our mentality is, I just gotta survive and get through this season so we can get back to the warm climate. However, up north, they look at snow and it's just a way of life. Like they just embrace the snow and they've decided, I'm gonna invest in the snowy season and I'm gonna thrive in the snowy season. I grew up in Virginia. We got some snow from time to time. But when I was growing up, I always wanted to live in Colorado. In fact, my dream was to live in Aspen, Colorado. I wanted to live out Midwest. I wanted to go somewhere where it snowed all the time. I wanted to be like a ski instructor or something. I mean, I had like this crazy dream, right? And I remember back in 2003, I got an opportunity to go out, not to Colorado, but I went out to Salt Lake City, Utah. Our church in Georgia was planning a church in the Mormon capital of the world, which is Salt Lake City. And if you've never been in Salt Lake City before, I don't mean like a shot against Salt Lake City, but it is a different place. I mean, it feels like you kind of stepped into like Russia or something. Literally, it's like everybody dresses the same, acts the same, talks the same, drives the same cars. It's like 95% Mormon. It's just a very cultish environment. And so our church was planning a church there to bring the hope of Jesus to Salt Lake City. And I remember that I was there the last week of July in through the first week of February. And I remember it because we were having a Super Bowl party. Some of you will remember that in 2003, your Carolina Panthers were playing against the New England Patriots. We were there. I call them your Carolina Panthers because they're not my Carolina Panthers. And so I just want to say this as a prophetic statement today. My Philadelphia Eagles are playing your Carolina Panthers today, and I'm prophetically telling you the Eagles are going to win. Now, I don't know if that's true or not because I didn't come from God, but I'm just believing that in faith, right? And so we're there in Utah, and I thought I loved the snow. Every day we were there, it snowed 6, 8, 10, 12 inches every single day. So we would come outside in the driveway. We were staying at the pastor's house, and we would have to dig out of the driveway with snow shovels every single morning, our 15-passenger van. Now, I'm there on a mission trip, and I'm trying not to cuss, right? Because I'm just frustrated. And I look over at the neighbors, and they're out there just whistling, enjoying life, because this is just a way of life. I'm just trying to get through the next 10 days, and these jokers are over here thriving. I look over, and this guy's having the time of his life. And this is their lifestyle every single day. Like when you're in Utah, they don't plow the roads every day. They just don't. And so you dig out of your driveway, the snow is what it is. They might come once a week and plow, but it just piles up. It's crazy, right? So we go into downtown Salt Lake City. I'm walking around with my winter jacket that I bought over at Burlington Coat Factory, and I feel like they have lied to me. They have sold me a jacket that does not keep me warm because I am freezing to death. I'm all bundled up with all this gear, and I'm looking at the gear that the people from Salt Lake City wear. They got on these wool jackets, and they got on these big leather gloves, and they got on these different hats and boots. And what I began to realize is what I often just tried to get through, just to try to get through the season, to hold on, that I've never fully invested in winter. And you know what they've had to do in the North, they've had to do out of the Midwest, is they've made a decision that I'm gonna choose to invest in this season, and not just invest in the season just to get by, so that we can thrive in our current season that we're in. That's what this teaching series that we've currently been in, called The Last 18 Months Sucked. Now what? It's how can I learn to thrive even in the sucky seasons? How can I learn to really thrive when it seems like the world's flipped upside down? When it feels like everything's gone mad. The last 18 months, it feels like our way of life and what we're used to has been turned on its head. So how can I survive? Not just get through, not just hold on, but how can I move beyond survival mode and go into a place where I can begin to thrive? Because I think many of us, when we get in difficult seasons, when we get into a difficult winter, right, we're thinking, I just want to get through this season. So if I can just hold on a little longer, if we could just muster through this season, if we could just get past this present circumstance, then I can get to a place of thriving in my life. But what if, just listen to me, what if God wanted something different for you? What if God didn't want you to just to hold on and barely survive and barely get through? But what if God wanted you to actually invest in your current season, no matter how difficult or dark it may be, and God wanted you to actually thrive right where you are? Can you imagine for just a moment, in your worst, most difficult moment, if God wanted you to thrive beyond it, if you're willing to go all in on God, even when it seems really dark, even when it feels like, in the words of President Joe Biden, that you're going through a dark, cold, long winter, right? When it feels like this season is just not changing. We've been perpetually going through this tough season with a child, with a health situation, in our marriage, financially, with a job, and it just seems like I just can't get through it. And what if God says, I want you to embrace where you are, and I want you to thrive right in this season? Because what I have for you is bigger than this current season. Because we do know that seasons change. And God says, in this season, I want to develop and build something in you for a better future, for something that you can't even see right now. Why is it that some people thrive in certain conditions, while some people become paralyzed in certain conditions? I mean, when you think about people, again, over the last 18 months, there are some people who just meant they lost sight of everything. And everything went crazy for them. And so you just pressed pause spiritually, relationally, on your life. You went numb, apathetic, and maybe to the things of God, whatever it might be. And yet there's some people who have thrived in this season spiritually. They've gone all in this season. They've embraced the season for what it is. And they've chosen to find God's very best, even in the midst of difficulty and crisis. When it comes to our life, most people are asking God, God, change my environment. God, if you'll just change my season. Here's what I want you to know today. God is not wanting you today to desire just to change your season. He's saying, why don't you pray right now, God, change my investment in this current season. Now, I just turned the page because here's what many of us believe. Man, if I could just have some better people in my life, if this season of who I'm with right now, who I work with, where I work, who I work for, who I live with, who's around me, who I'm doing life with, if God could just replace them, then man, my life would be so much better. And I tell people, you can switch zip codes and discover that the same problems show up with a new zip code. You can move into a house and the same problems show up in that house. If you don't deal with them, You don't deal with your relational issues, and those same issues will show up in the next relationship. So what God is saying right now is, I'm not asking you to pray that God just change my season, God change my environment. Pray, God, let me invest deeper into what you're doing, the work that you desire to do right now in this present season of my life. That's what this teaching series has been all about. How to invest in God's very best for your life, regardless of the setbacks, regardless of the failures, regardless of the difficulties. If the last 18 months has taught us anything, is that like literally anything is possible. All hell can break loose. And everything that you and I know about life can be turned upside down. And so I have to say, in the midst of all of this, God, do you still have a greater purpose? I believe that. I think many of us believe that today. My fear, though, is that I think many of us believe that, and we talk about it, and we're like, yes, God's got a better future. Yes, God's got a plan for my life. We've been learning about all these things about God's design for my life, and God give me a vision for our life, and these God-sized dreams, and we're like, yes. But I wonder how many of us are actually living into it. We're actually willing to take a hold of it and trust God that my present circumstances do not define, God, your preferred future for my life. So this series has been a call beyond where we are, beyond the status quo, beyond just settling and just grinding through the season, but trusting that God has something better. And so that's the encouragement today, that we would invest in God's very best for our life. Over the past few weeks, we've been walking through the Old Testament story of Jeremiah. And in this season, we have been learning about that. We've been looking at this guy, Jeremiah. We've been looking at what he was going through during this day. We've been trying to glean some wisdom from him, looking at the words of God. We've been trying to get a clearer view of our lives, right? Really, God, where do you want for us? God, give me a vision beyond where I am, beyond my circumstances. God, call me out to something greater. We talked last week again about God-sized dreams. And we said that God-sized dreams come with God-directed plans. God will often give you a dream beyond where you are, but then God will give you the plans to actually get there. What it means then is that I can't chase after the dream without God. So I gotta surrender to God. I gotta link up to God. And through God's Spirit, he directs and guides me towards the vision he has for my life. So it's been that call of saying, guys, it's time to dream again, to believe in something beyond where you are right now, to believe beyond your present circumstances. Because I do believe that God's got a greater future in store for your life. I do believe that. Now, again, I'm not trying to sell you some prosperity gospel, because we're not promised that everything in this life is gonna be perfect. But I do believe even beyond this life that God has a preferred future for us that's bigger than we could ever think or imagine in our life. What I want to do today is I want to pick up our story today in the Old Testament book again of Jeremiah. And I don't have a lot of time to go back and just press review every single week. And so the good thing about technology is all of our services are online. You can go back and journey with us over the last 4 weeks, because these 4 weeks, they're all building on one another. And today's message is setting us up to the final message of the series next week. We're going to talk about leaving a lasting legacy. And so we're putting our life in order by getting a vision and understanding our calling and our purpose and getting a dream from God and living into God's best for our life. It's all building so that we can have a story worth telling that shows the work of God in our life, that we leave for legacies. But again, I want to encourage you to go back and just get caught up even on the book of Jeremiah. But let me kind of tell you where we are today. Today, when we pick up our story in the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah is in a really difficult circumstance. The nation of Israel is going through a really hard time. God has sent Jeremiah as a prophet, a messenger of God, to come and tell the Israelite people that they need to turn their hearts back to God. Because of the circumstances of life, because they've been reading all the news about the impending doom that is coming, the impending destruction that's coming at the mighty hands of the Babylonians. The people have packed it in. The news of the day has ruled them, right? Has controlled their mind, their thought, their actions. And they've gone numb to the things of God. And so Jeremiah for years has been saying, turn your heart back to God, turn your heart back to God. And the people refuse to listen. And so last week we discovered that the inevitable takes place. And finally what happens is King Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, and the Babylonian army show up to Israel, specifically in the southern region of Israel known as Judah, and they decimate the city. They destroy the temple, they destroy the buildings, they replace the king of Judah with one of the Babylonian kings, right? And they take 10,000 of the best and brightest young people out of Judah, and they exile them. They take them captives to Babylon. And so what happens? As the Babylonians go back, take the people with them, Judah's left to kind of recover and rebuild. And so here they're now under this rule of this new king, and what happens? That king ends up rebelling against King Nebuchadnezzar. Now, King Nebuchadnezzar ain't about to stand for anybody who's going to rebel against his authority. So King Nebuchadnezzar sends his troops back to Israel. And right as the people were just getting a foothold, right as they were just beginning to put their lives back together, they come and decimate the city again. And now they begin to go to all the surrounding cities, and they destroy all the surrounding cities around Judah. And they make their way up to the capital city of Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem is surrounded by a big wall that fortifies the city. And so the Babylonians come up with a military strategy. They say, instead of waging war and losing a bunch of countless lives, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna set our entire army around the walls of Jerusalem, and we're gonna just wait outside. Nobody's coming in, nobody's going out. There's gonna be no importing, no exporting any goods, and we're gonna patiently sit here and wait for everyone to starve to death or die of disease. So you gotta know, in Jerusalem, things have gotten crazy. People going to Walmart, right? There ain't no milk, there ain't no eggs, there ain't no butter, right? There's no bread, right? Inflation's going through the roof. Everything's at 1,000% of the cost of what it was, right? I mean, people are freaking out, right? People are charging for water for your horses and your donkeys. I mean, it's gotten crazy, right? And so God comes back to Jeremiah and he gives him this word of encouragement. He says, go tell the people this. This is what Jeremiah says. Hey guys, it's gonna get worse. It's gonna go from bad to worse. We're going to lose. And thousands of us are going to die. Our only hope is to wave the white flag and surrender and become captives to Babylonians. I wanna remind you that God has said we are only gonna be exiled for 70 years. He's gonna bring us back. But this is a hopeless situation here in Jerusalem. Now, the king of Judah at the time, the rebel king of Judah, he don't like Jeremiah's message like the Israelites didn't. So the only worst part about sitting inside the city walls, waiting to die through starvation, is now Jeremiah has been arrested, put into the palace prison, and he's sitting there, starving to death, waiting to die. And while he's there, God brings another message to him. I want to pick up our story today in Jeremiah chapter 32, verses 6 through 8 and verse 15. It says, Jeremiah said, the word of the Lord came to me, Hanamel, son of Shallum, your uncle, is going to come to you and say, buy my field at Anathoth, because as its nearest relative, it is your right and duty to buy it. So God comes to him and says, hey, your cousin's gonna approach you about buying some land while you're in prison in the royal palace. He says, then just as the Lord had said, my cousin Hanamel came to me in the courtyard of the guard and said, buy my field at Anathoth in the territory of Benjamin, since it's your right to redeem it and possess it. Buy it for yourself. I knew that this was the word of the Lord, for this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Listen to what he says. Houses, fields, and vineyards will again be bought in this land. Now let's just pause right there for just a moment. Because this sounds crazy, right? I mean, you're sitting behind a wall that is fortified with the Babylonian Empire waiting for you to starve, just waiting it out. You are in a prison cell, and your cousin comes to you and says, hey, I got a great investment for you. Why don't you go ahead and buy some land that inevitably the Babylonians are gonna own, right? So why don't you go ahead right now? I mean, the market is hot right now. I'm sure everybody was selling property during this day. I mean, it seems like a foolish investment. Why don't you go ahead and buy this land right now that has no value and pay a small fortune for it? I mean, it seems crazy. Because in this moment, if I'm Jeremiah, I feel like all hope is lost. Man, it seems like the game is over. It seems like there's no future for us. Maybe you have been in a season of life, or maybe you're there where you have felt like it's over. It's over. Can I tell you this? With God, it's never over. It's never over, right? You may feel like this season you're in has robbed you of any future, of ever moving beyond where you are, but God looks at your life and says, it's not over. The marriage may feel like it's over, but let me just show you what I have on the other side. Maybe you've lost perspective right now, but I want your vision and focus to be on a preferred future. I got something greater. It may feel like your child is never coming home again, and they're never gonna turn their heart to God. And God's like, you keep praying and you keep believing this season. You invest in this season. You keep loving them. And there's something on the other side. I'm not trying to sell you some false promise today. It's just what I believe about God. Maybe you've walked through some difficult seasons, a crisis, a death that you're walking through as a family. Maybe it's a diagnosis that seems really grim. I don't know what you're walking through. But I know the enemy wants to convince you that it's over, that it's over. And God shows up in a moment that it seems like it's over and says, hey, Jeremiah, I want you to invest not now because this investment now seems worthless, but this is gonna have some value in the future. He's showing him a bigger picture. He's saying, there will be my people who will return. They will own houses here. They will own land. I will return the vineyards. I will return what I promised to them. It will be redeemed and restored. This is what God honors. Now, you have to understand something. If you grew up as an Israelite man, to own a piece of property in Israel was a huge deal. In fact, a deed to a piece of property was connected to your identity. Because you have to remember, this land, Jerusalem, was God's promise over his people for hundreds of years. This was the fulfillment of God's promise. So for you to own a piece of property was like you were owning a piece of God's promise. You were believing in it. So in this moment, Jeremiah is making a prophetic statement. He says, I'm gonna buy this land because I'm believing God had his word. Even though I can't see God or feel God or touch God in this moment, I'm believing that God's word is true. And maybe for some of you, that's what you have to say. I'm putting a stake in the future, but I start to putting a stake right now. I'm gonna invest in God right now, not believing that immediately my circumstances are gonna change. But I do believe that God's got something greater than the season that I'm in right now. You gotta believe that in the season. Because if you don't, what you'll tend to do is push back in the season, go into survival mode. You'll hold on, you'll grit your teeth, and you'll miss out on the work of God that God desires to do in your life. Jeremiah is embracing the worst possible moment while still believing there is something greater in God's future. Again, what does this mean for you and me? I don't know what season you are facing. At all of our locations, we got some people who are going through some very difficult seasons of life. And I don't pretend to know the hurt and pain that you're experiencing or the hurt and pain that you're gonna go through. And I mean this. We are not promised that our life will be free of any of the trials or hurts and pains or storms of life. We are not promised freedom from that. But instead of you just gritting your teeth, maybe being numb or mad at God, what if in this season instead you embrace God right in the middle of your pain, right in the middle of your storm, and you went all in on God and you said, God, even in this season, even in this tough season of life, God, I still believe there is something that you want in my life. What I've discovered so often in my life, it's in the most painful seasons, the difficult seasons, that God will often grow you and stretch you the most. That God will reveal himself to you in ways he could not reveal to you if you have not gone through that season. It's in difficult seasons that God is often preparing you for future difficult seasons because you're gonna walk through some more hurt and pain in life. So God says, what I want you to do is I want you to embrace this season right where you are. So you say, God, I am trusting you that right now, even when I can't see you, and there's moments in my life where God, I don't even feel like I hear you right now. God, I'm gonna trust you no matter what. God, I'm gonna have faith to believe that I can trust you no matter what. I wanna give you a big idea today just to write down at all of our locations because I think this really sums up a lot of how we see God and really our faith that we have in God. So again, all of our locations today, I just want you to write this down. How we behave today is the best indicator of what we believe about tomorrow. This is the truth for all of us. When we are faced with a hardship, when we are faced with a difficulty, how we behave in this moment is really the biggest indicator of what we believe about tomorrow. Do we really believe that God could bring us through this? Do we really believe there's some healing and restoration and redemption? Do we really believe? Because if we really believed, then our actions and how we behaved would probably be different. When the last 18 months, we went through some hardships. Many of us got caught up in emotion, and we were fighting political wars and battles, and we were fighting COVID wars and battles, and we were fighting all these battles, and yet we were losing in our relationship with God, and it's had ramifications, right? It's in fact infected and impacted where we are spiritually. It's impacted our home. It's impacted us from being all that God created us to be. And so we gotta be very cautious about how we behave because it tells a story so often about what we believe. See, you know what I think happens for so many of us when we are faced with a difficult situation? I think so often what we do is we sell out God's future for what we can get right now. This is what we often do. We all do this. In fact, I want you to write this down at all of our locations today. We are all sellouts. Why don't you turn to your neighbor right now and say, hey, you're a sellout. Why don't you turn to your neighbor right now and just say, hey, you're a sellout. Right now, if you're online right now, just go ahead and say, hey, I'm a sellout, right? Just go ahead and type that out, right? Why don't you turn back to your neighbor and say, if I'm a sellout, then you a sellout, right? Go back and tell them right now. If I'm a sellout, you are too. See, I think we're all sellouts. I think so often when we are pressed with the current situation, with the status quo, when it's not good, we have this idea that maybe God has something great in the future, but I can't see it. So we sell out to the now. And when we do, we lose out on God's preferred future. You say, what's a sellout? Here's what a sellout is. A sellout is an expression we use for someone that compromises their integrity or character in exchange for personal gain. Someone who is willing to sell out or compromise their character or integrity in exchange for personal gain. Now you say, I didn't come to church today. I didn't tune in online to hear that I'm a sellout. And I'll say we all are, because all of us at some point in our life, we have or we will sell out God's preferred future for right now. How many of you, you knew that God had someone for you, someone that he's promised you, that would honor you, cherish you, respect you, do life with you, but you lost sight of the future and you became a sellout for what you could get right now because you were afraid that you would do life by yourself? How many of you, God called you? He called you to be a missionary. He called you to be a preacher. He called you to be involved in his work. He called you to be a teacher. You know what God called you to. And yet you have been a sellout because you didn't think maybe it would pay the bills or maybe it would take care of you, whatever it is. In our life, in our business, in relationships, we have all been sellouts for personal profit and personal gain in our lives time and time again. And here's reality. When we sell out for the now, we rob ourselves of God's very best for the future. And so many of us, because we have been selling out, are missing out on what God has for us. And so God says, I want you to go all in right where you are. Let's be honest, now is so blinding. It is. What is in front of us, the circumstances that are in front of us are so big. Let me just illustrate it for you this way. It's the best way that I know how to illustrate this to you today. Because I think many of us, we see life through this prism right here. It's the now, right? And now determines so much, right? Right now, it's pressing. Right now, it's the tyranny of the urgent. It's where my marriage is right now. It's where my kids are right now. It's where we are financially right now. It's where I'm struggling right now. It's my numb relationship with God right now. And now determines so much. It's pressing, it's urgent, it's immediate, it's now. And so we fight this battle every day. We fight a battle how we can get through the now. How, God, I know you have a preferred future for my marriage, but right now it doesn't seem very good. So we're fighting this battle every day, waging war in the here and now. And we're losing the battle, aren't we? So often now presses so much, it robs so much, it steals our focus. It's all we can see. And some of you, this is where you are. You can't see God. You can't even think about a God-sized dream. You can't even think about a preferred future because all you see is right now. But what if we saw life differently? What if instead of you and I just seeing now and now, what if we were able to see as God sees it? What if the battle that we were fighting that seemed like now was a different perspective from God? What if God instead saw our now as this? What if the battle that we're waging war on every day, God's like, hey, I've already won that battle. That marriage battle that you think right now seems so big for you that you aren't gonna make it through and you're just holding on, grinding through the season. He says, let me just tell you something. I've already won that battle for your life. Maybe with that child that you have just given to God over and over again and you feel like you are losing the battle, God says, hey, that's my battle. I've already claimed victory over it. Don't let the now rob you of what the preferred future is that I have for that individual's life, what I want to do. What if God looked at you and said, all the energy, time, effort that you have spent over the last 18 months or maybe 18 years engaged in the now, God says, listen, it's already been won for you. I've already claimed victory over every facet of your life. God has already defeated all of the enemies in front of you, all of the difficult seasons, and he's already won the greatest battle of all. And that does not mean that this life is just gonna magically get better. God has won the ultimate victory. He has made a promise on our life. The preferred future for us is greater than this earth. God has promised us a place of perfection, of sinlessness, a place of heaven, a preferred future, a preferred hope beyond this world. And God says, I've already won that battle. If your eyes are always just focused on the present circumstances, then you will miss out on what I have for you, of where your life is going, and the ultimate plan that I have for your life. Oftentimes, we spend our lives running from seasons that God wants to grow us in, develop us in, do something in our lives, right? That's what God desires for us. Your choice today is this, is that you can continue to sell out on what God has, your preferred future, or you can choose the opposite today. Instead of being a sellout today, this is where I believe many of us desire to be. Instead of being a sellout today, I believe many of us want to be sold out. And sold out means something completely different. It means completely committed, fully devoted, and invested in one God's given purpose. Completely committed, fully devoted, and invested in one's God-given purpose. This means no matter what life throws at me, no matter what I go through, no matter what I deal with in my life, I believe today that God's purpose is greater than whatever I face in this world. Whatever's going on in this country, I am committed and devoted to God's purpose for my life. That means I'm gonna walk through some hard seasons. I'm gonna go through some difficulty. We're gonna face some grim outcomes. We're gonna lose some family members. We're gonna face some diagnosis. People's relationships are gonna fail around us. But I still believe that God's purpose is greater than the losses of this world. And I'm committed to it. I'm sold out to it. I don't wanna be a sellout. I wanna be sold out to God. This is the truth for us today. You can write this down. We can sell out to someone or something, or we can be sold out for God. But this is the truth. We can't do both. We cannot say, God, I'm fully sold out to you while we're selling him out for our businesses and our finances and our easy way of life and culture in the world. We cannot live like everyone else and be sold out to God. We just can't. I mean, the book of Revelation says that we can be cold or we can be hot, but we can't be both. It says specifically, we cannot be a lukewarm follower of Jesus. We cannot come in and say, God, I'm sold out to you, while we continue to sell out our preferred future and make compromises in our relationships, sexually, morally, settling for people that we know that aren't the people that God would want us to have in our life. We cannot continue to say we're sold out to God all the while we're building our own kingdoms. We're not living to what God wants. We don't have time. We don't have energy. We're so caught up in the world and making money that we're not investing in God's kingdom. We're not serving people. We're not opening our heart and life. All the while, we're convincing ourselves that we're sold out. But let's be honest. Many of us are convincing ourselves of something that's not true. We're sellouts. We have a decision to make today. Are we going to continue to sell out? Or are we going to be people today who are going to be sold out for God and God's purpose and plan no matter what we're facing? See, too often when we are pressed by our present circumstances, we will sell out tomorrow's future because we are just simply trying to survive today. Let me say that again. Too often, when we are pressed by our present circumstances, we sell out tomorrow's future because we are simply trying to survive today. But Jeremiah shows us a different way. Those who desire God's best must become sold out, or else we will become sellouts. The tension in our life, the gravitational pull, is to constantly sell out the future for what I can gain right now. And the Bible tells us, what good is it a man to gain the whole world and yet lose his soul, right? We're trying to gain the now. And God said, hey, where you are right now, I'm still there. Even in that difficult season, and I wanna pull you, I wanna direct you, I wanna steer you. If you keep your eyes on me, I wanna show you what I inevitably have for your life. Today, I'm making an invitation. Jeremiah has shown us this different way to live. Even in the midst of the circumstances, he embraced them, and he was willing to invest in something far greater than where he was, believing that his God was true, that his God would inevitably restore back to them everything that had been lost and more. I'm inviting you today to step on the other side of the glass, to see life not through your perspective of now, but to see it through God's perspective of one. I'm challenging you to leverage your now for God's very best. Because if you are in Christ Jesus, if you are a follower of God through Jesus Christ, let me tell you something, you have already won. Not you, but Jesus already won for you. He has already claimed victory in every aspect of your life. So he says, man, I just want you to trust me. Even when it's grim, even when it's dark, I just want you to trust me. I want you to invest in me. I want you to find me in every season, because there is no season that you will ever walk through, no circumstance that is too big for God. No matter how broken or messed up it is, God says, I will meet you right in that season. I will pick you up, carry you if necessary, and I'll carry you towards my preferred future, but you just gotta trust me. Stop trying to fix the now. If you could have already fixed your now, you would have already fixed it. What you realize today is that you can't fix it without God. Stop trying to pick up all the broken pieces and make sense out of it. God says, that's my job. Give it to me. Bring me all your brokenness. We sing about all your scars, all your tattered pieces, and let God do what only God can do. There is no season that you will ever experience that God will drop you off and leave you there for yourself. God says, even if you're in a painful season right now that you caused yourself, if you call out to me, you will find me. He says he hears your voice, he hears your cries, he will meet you right in the middle of it. Don't sell out your present circumstances today. I want to encourage you to be sold out for God today. I want to challenge you today to invest fully in God. Maybe you're skeptical today. You're like, why should I invest in God? Why should I invest my life in him? And this is why. Because God's totally invested in you. I mean, while you were still selling out your life to other things and to the world and to sin, God had already been sold out for you. I mean, God was the ultimate person of being sold out that we've ever seen in all of humanity, all of the world. Because while we were still sinners, God sent Jesus into this world to live a perfect life, a sinless life, to live the life that you and I could not live on our own. Jesus was so sold out to the mission that he took it all the way to a cross. And on the cross, he bore the sins of the world. He was fully invested in his Father's plan of loving a humanity that would turn their back on him time and time again, that would sell him out over and over again. Jesus died on that cross and he went into a tomb where he spent 3 days dead in the tomb. But while he was there, he conquered spiritual death and physical death. So on the third day that he could be resurrected victoriously through the power of God. And that victory through Jesus is available to you and I. When we put our faith and trust in him and we go all in on him and we invest fully in him, he says, I'm invested fully in you. From every moment you walk in me, you are part of my investment. And I had a plan for your life. And it was bigger than this world. It was bigger than the season that you're walking through right now. If you'll just trust me, I have an investment that's bigger, that's beyond this world. See, God's promise, again, is bigger than this earth. It's so hard for us to capture. I mean, again, these people that have been exiled by the Babylonians, the Israelite people, they would go there for 70 years. Some of them, all they would ever know, they would go to Babylon and they would die in Babylon. God told them, I'll still allow you to thrive there. But understand, God's promise was bigger than Babylon. It was bigger than Jerusalem. It was bigger than the nation of Israel. It's bigger than where we are today. God's promise was a preferred future. An eternity in a place called heaven that you and I are given because God has made an investment into our life, and all we have to do is receive it. I mean, imagine if I came to you today and said, man, I have this investment that you could go in, and it's free. And if you receive it, let me just tell you something. Where it will take you, you can't see it right now, but let me just tell you on the other end what it could do for you. How many of us wouldn't say, well, man, I want to invest in that? And it has huge ramifications for my future, and all I have to do is receive that investment. Who wouldn't do that? God said, that's what I did for you. I made a huge eternal investment in your life, and all you have to do in faith is receive it. Not just so you can go back to doing life the way that you were. No, you got to receive it in faith, but then you got to be sold out to it. Fully committed in faith to follow, grow, and live for Jesus. Listen, we got to be people today who are willing to be sold out to God, or we will compromise and be sellouts. I want to ask you, what area of your life have you been selling out God for? What area of your life have you allowed to become the focus? Maybe God's calling your heart today to be sold out to him, because you begin to realize that this world is going to fail us. And it may get worse. I don't know what the outcome is. Again, I'm not a prophet. I'm not Jeremiah. I don't think it's getting much better. And so, God, if you truly created me for a bigger purpose and a bigger cause beyond this world, God, I want to tap into that, because this world isn't doing it for me. There was a famous missionary by the name of Jim Elliot. Some of you are familiar with him. And tragically, he died many years ago. He was out on the mission field, and he was killed by a tribe of warriors that killed him and some of the other missionaries. But he has a very famous quote that I think is very relevant to where we are today, and I'll close with this. He says, he is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. Let me tell you the wisdom in this. Our life doesn't keep. A life on earth has an expiration date. He says, he is no fool who gives up what you can't keep. You can't keep this life. You can be successful, and you can work, and you can build the now, and you can build your empire, and you can build your kingdom, but you're not going to keep it. It's going to be lost. He says, you give all that up for Jesus. You put your trust in him, your faith in him. You receive the investment of what God offers you, and you gain what you cannot lose, an eternal investment in your life. And no matter what happens in the here and the now, the world cannot snatch from you. The enemy cannot snatch from you. Circumstances cannot snatch from you. Why don't you go all in on God today? Because he's already gone all in on you. Right now, what I want to do is at all of our locations, I just want to have a moment just for you to just reflect on where you are right now in this moment, in this season. And so I would ask you at all of our physical locations, just close your eyes wherever you are right now. If you're online right now, you can close your eyes just in this moment. And I just want you just for a moment to just maybe ask God, what is the area of my life that I could be honest about? That maybe because of the now of my life that I've been selling you out on. Maybe right now, the now has determined so much of my life. I'm so caught up in the now of my marriage, my life, my circumstances, the world, COVID, the stock market, all these things that are controlling me, and now has caused me to lose sight of who you are. And God, I just want to give you my now. I don't know what that now is. It could be some deep-seated pain. Some of your now could be a deep addiction that you're really wrestling with. You're trying to find freedom in. Now it could be a marriage that literally is just hanging by a thread. Now it could be that child who you've been praying for and you've been praying for. I don't know what it is. Why don't you just give it to God right now? Just say, God, I'm going to give it to you right now in this moment. God, because I do believe, God, that there is a future hope that is greater than my present circumstances. God, I'm going to trust you with it. Maybe at all of our locations right now, if you want some prayer right now, why don't you just put your hand in the air at all of our physical locations? If you're online right now, we'll have a volunteer available for you. Why don't you just jump into the prayer? Somebody would be glad to chat with you. Maybe you're carrying something around today. We just want to pray for you. I just want to pray for you. God, right now in this present moment, God, I realize there are people who are going through some real hardships, some real struggles, some real difficulties. And now seems so pressing. Now seems so big. God, I pray today that maybe you could change our perspective. It doesn't mean that our now is going to be fixed tomorrow. God, that we're going to go out here and it's going to be a brighter day or the promise of everything getting better. But God, I want to give you my now because I do believe, God, in this season, you're still with me. You're still in the midst. I've been trying to carry this around. I've been trying to fix it. I've been trying to just muster through it and get the energies to make it through another day. But God, what I realize today is that I need to invest in you even in this season. Because God, you're not void of this season. God, you're right here with me. God, I want to find you in this season. God, I want to experience you in a different way. I want to encounter you in this season because I realize that life is full of seasons and I want to face more difficult seasons in life as I move forward. So God, I want you to grow me and stretch me and show me who you are. Reveal yourself to me. Tell God, say, God, I don't really feel you right now. God, I want to feel you. I want to see you. God, I believe that you can do a work in my life. Just give it to him. Maybe you're here today and you've never received the investment of Jesus into your life. Maybe you've just been going through life and you just never really received that investment. You've never gone in all in him. Today's a moment. You have a decision to make. Am I going to continue trying to do life on my own or am I going to surrender to God today? If that's you, all you have to do is in faith today, just say, I'm going to put my faith and trust in Jesus, who died for me, died for my sin, who claimed victory over my life, who claimed victory over death. And today I want to put my faith and trust in him. I want to invest my future in the hands of the one who knew me before the foundations of the world and had already purposed and planned my steps. If that's you today, maybe you just want to throw up your hand. We're going to pray for you right now that you could receive Jesus today. If you're online today, you just click a box and say, I want to know more about a relationship with Jesus. That's why we're here. If that's you, just say, Jesus, today, I receive what you did for me on a cross. I receive in faith that you died on a cross for my sins. You made the greatest investment in my life. You died for me so that I could be forgiven. It wasn't just a momentary investment. It was an eternal investment. God, you came and sent Jesus into this world to bring my relationship back into good standing with you. And God, through Jesus, through the death on that cross, I can be in right standing with you, God. God, I believe in faith that Jesus went into a tomb, but he was resurrected from the grave and he is victorious. And he can claim victory over my life and my future. I place it in your hands today. God, right now, I just pray over all of our locations that, God, you would move in people's hearts and lives. And that, God, we would invest in your very best, God, in whatever season we're in, believing that, God, you have something far greater than the here and now of our life. God, we trust you. Even when it's hard, even when we can't see you, God, we trust you. God, move and do a work in our lives. In Christ Jesus' name we pray.
However or wherever you're watching or listening, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Alex and I'm the online pastor here at Hope Church. And here at Hope, we want to do whatever it takes for all people to follow, grow, and live for Jesus. And so our prayer for you here today is that you would not only feel encouraged and inspired through today's message, but that we could also help you take your next step towards Jesus today. So if today you're feeling empowered to take your next step, I want to invite you to do one of two things. The first is to go to our website, hopechurchnc.com, and go to the Next Steps tab to sign up for Next Steps. This is a great way, whether you're in person or online to get connected to Hope Church. And secondly, if you have a specific prayer request, a praise, or question, you can email me at alex@hopefornc.com. I'd love to personally connect with you. And as always, if you would say that Hope Church is making an impact in your life and encouraging you in your relationship with Jesus, then I'd like to invite you to support this ministry through generosity. Week after week, we're seeing lives change because of Jesus. So we would be honored for you to partner with us as we continue to do whatever it takes for all people to follow, grow, and to live for Jesus. You can also download the Hope Church app in the App Store or Google Play Store for more resources and to stay up to date with everything that's going on here at Hope Church. We want to do anything that we can and everything that we can to help and resource you in your relationship with Jesus. Again, thank you so much for watching or listening. We hope to hear from you soon.